This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. And folks, we are celebrating the 40th anniversary of one of my favorite movies, I just turned 50 this year, so I would have been 10 when this came out, but I didn't see it at 10. But boy, it was a staple of many people at that time's puberty growing up. I love this film, folks. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which I got here on Blu-ray, celebrating its 40th anniversary. And I've had people on here like Amanda Wyss has been on here. So has the beautiful Kelly Maroney. Sonny Carl Davis is on here, but not ordering any food. Now we got the guy that we can have perform at any prom that you happen to be doing, just as long as you have Jess Piccoli there. Folks, I give you an awesome musician, David Brandt. How you do, David?
I'm good. Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Greg. At Python, I should say. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. It's funny because you're part of the soundtrack. I should have the soundtrack album out, and I don't.
Well, actually, that's a good place to start right there. We never got put on. We didn't get put on the soundtrack album where, you'd think that the prom song of all the songs should be put on the, not that I behold any grudges because I really don't, but I always thought that that was a mistake, both from a selfish perspective as well as from the general perspective, because people love that song and love Spicoli coming up and saying, "Hey, dude, I know that song," and they left, and we actually didn't. We couldn't do our original tunes because we were an original band. We had to do Irving Azoff's catalog of tunes. And we, fortunately, we came up with our own arrangement of Wooly Bully and recorded it in the studio, and Life in the Fast Lane and one other one I'll tell you about later. But it never got put on the album. And I guess, there's Jackson Browne certainly was going to be on the album. Love Rules, Don Henley going to be on the album. But, you think that the prom music, which was part of the movie, would be on it. So I thought, I'm sorry that they didn't do that. Let me put it that way.
You know what? I got the soundtrack album, but a lot of times when I'm at the station, I go on YouTube and I go play something, But I got the soundtrack, I got the physical media, but I've been in this apartment complex for a couple years, so I haven't got a lot of stuff unpacked still. So my CDs are, yeah, I still have
I know that.
CDs. I know it's a dying thing now to have physical media, but
No, no,
I'm
no.
one of
I
those
still have my
people.
CD collection. I did reduce my albums from 1,500 to like maybe the 75 of them.
Hmm.
But the CDs I can't, it's hard to part with because if you go in a car, you go in certain places, or you want a concentrated sense of what that LP was like. An MP, I mostly do MP3s, but I finally did unpack mine when I moved here. Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say something else. I lost my thought.
but what a great soundtrack album, Like you get Tom Petty, you get the Cars. I love both of them. You got Donna
Yeah.
Summer on there, You got so much.
Well, you were really at the end of the 70s, early 80s. So it was really quite a time, I think, musically at that
Hmm.
point. It's really it was exciting. I mean, music sort of had come out of that 70s thing and was back to some raw stuff. And just looking at some of the lookalikes in there, the Pat Benatar lookalikes, the Elvis Costello lookalikes, if you really think about it, including
Hmm.
myself, would be probably one of those at that time. I think I think the director, who I happen to know and was married to, um, sort of had an inkling of what was going on in the times, and certainly had a personal what do you call it? Had a liked those looks. Let me just say it that way. Um, but that interestingly, I put a YouTube up of Wooly Bully, and it's the only recording that I know of that has the entire song. It's on my YouTube channel, and it's the only one I know of that has the entire song as we recorded it from beginning to end instead of looping it for the movie. And I put just a montage of pictures that I took from being in that time period and other things that I created in my nascent YouTube making capacity.
Yeah, I love this movie. I'm a big fan of teen comedies because I hated high school and school in general growing up, and a lot of these movies are kind of healing, you know? And
Yes, yes,
Fast
yes.
Times
I
at
love how you
Ridgemont
just
High is one of my favorites. You
what
know, you got that, you got Risky Business, you got Valley Girl, you got 16 Candles, and even more lately, stuff like Everybody Wants Some, stuff like Super Bad, you know, and stuff like that that are really, really good stuff. I love this genre, you know, and soundtrack really does a great job accompanying the story and kind of layering in with it.
Yeah, I never looked at it from that perspective. I appreciate what you're saying. So there was a method to their madness actually in making the soundtrack. You know, I I uh I was thinking about what you said earlier. You said you saw the movie at 10, or you didn't you were when it came out, you were 10 and you didn't see it till later. And because I was in it and involved in it, it was like, when am I have kids that are twin boy and girl. They're now 22. And I said, well, what age would it be appropriate to show this film? Um, and because there's a lot going on in it, between all the reveling of pot, revering of pot, and sex and various things going on. And we're pretty open, and I showed my kids everything from the 60s and 70s growing up. But I think finally, somewhere between 12 and 14, we said, all right, it's time to watch this thing.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, well, when you two are 30.
I should have said that. That would have been a great line. And
Twins,
yeah,
huh?
in terms of sensitive, I should have said that's great. In terms of healing, I think Amy was very sensitive and sensitized to that, and Cameron Crowe was sensitive and went in and I think that's why it's not an order. That's why it became what it became. Nobody thought it. I mean, I certainly didn't think it was going to become that, but everything about it really did give you a quote potential healing. I'm a therapist, so a potential healing experience. I mean, we all have been or can relate to some part of that, some character in that experience.
I
I'm not
think
going to
it's
tell you which
funny you
ones I
say you're a
relate
therapist. There's people in that movie that need a therapist.
to. Well, don't we all? But and and then to become a therapist, you certainly have to have lived a certain amount of crap, to gain empathy. You can't, how am I going to have empathy and walk in somebody else's shoes without having a little bit of messed upness in my roots and throughout, or whatever, on some level. I don't know. I mean, I think you have to have a certain amount of lived experience as well
Yeah.
as earned experience.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So,
No, twin dot. You know what? I've had the twins, the Materis twins on here. They were in single white female right at the beginning of it, you know. They're what you call mirror twins, you
yeah,
know.
my
So I've
brothers
had
are identical twins, so I know what you mean by that. I have 8 year young, they're 8 years younger, but that that scene is vaguely. I can see the twins in the movie right now in my head. Yeah,
yeah, right in the open. They were also in Kindergarten Cop and Problem Child, you know, and
and
so
always were they always cast as twins?
yeah. But I had them on a few years ago for single white female, and number one, they grew up stunning. But
Yes,
it was kind of interesting just looking at them, you know. And I would love to get the Shining twins on here if I could. But have your daughters ever
I grew
done
up with
that
the
to?
dub. Let me just interrupt you one second. I
Yeah.
grew up with the Doublemint twins. Did you remember Doublemint spearmint gum or Doublemint gum? There was if look it up at some point. Look at the old Doublemint advertisements. They had twins.
Oh, are you talking about the Moore girls that were in Friday the 13th, the final chapter?
You know so much more about movie history and names than I do. I have no idea. I just know they were twins in that Doublemint commercial, and they really underscored that theme. But
So
twins have
did
been a theme in my life too. Go.
have your daughters ever done the Shining thing where they turn the way the Shining twins and just freak you out?
Well, first of all, I have a son and a daughter, so they're fraternal twins. They're not identical,
Oh,
although they have the twin thing. It's like they know stuff the other one knows without even having to talk. I mean, there's something in that that they just know each other really well. and there's something alike in them, but they're really different folks and different looking. My brothers were identical. They're 8 years younger, and they really were like, yeah, you could but I'm not even going to go into some of the ways they fooled people in ways, but yeah.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, no, I love the soundtrack of these movies, and it really underscores uh the time when these movies come out too,
Yes,
So,
yes.
I experienced it really well with Everybody Wants Some, which was a David Linklater film from 2016. It was the spiritual sequel to Dazed and Confused, but instead of the last day of high school, it's that weekend before college. And it's set in 1980, and it starts out with My Sharona by the Knack, and it ends with
Yeah.
Good Times Roll by the Cars. And all through it, I'm just getting lost. I went to that movie 9 times in the theater.
What's the name of it?
Everybody Wants Some.
Okay, I mean, there's a song everybody wants some.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
in there too.
Okay, yeah. All right, I'm
Yeah,
gonna check that one out. That sounds good.
I
I don't
love
know
that
why, but
film.
I've always been really attracted to teen movies, and I mean, I don't know, something about it. There's something about either I'm remastering those conflicts and issues from that time period, and as they say in my profession, the Sturm and Drang from that period. But and also just I relate. I mean, I think we're all there, and we all. I don't know. Not everybody loved their college and their high school times. I probably loved college more than I loved high school, but those are magical times. First of all, our heads are kind of empty slates, and lots can get written on them, and they get recorded and remembered and felt really well. Versus later, when there's so much already in there, it's hard for something to really make a big etching on there. A strong
Hmm.
etching. But so they're really powerful times. And I don't know, but I'm like a real sucker for teen films and films about coming of age, that kind of thing. Even to this day, there's a part of me that will kind of just say, oh yeah, wait, well, maybe we should watch that or something. It's there. But there's a lot of dumb ones, and then there's a lot of great ones. My kids, I'm so bad with movie names and stuff. Heathers, there's something like Heathers.
Heathers?
Yeah, they love that. They love,
Hmm.
Mean Girls was huge.
I
Everybody.
love Mean Girls. I've
Oh
done a
yeah.
couple of interviews from it.
Oh, you have? Well, that's
Yeah,
awesome. That's awesome. Wow.
I
Yeah.
love Mean Girls.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, that's another cult classic that came up around
Hmm.
that genre, in a way.
Love Mean Girls. Yeah. I've
So they
had a couple of people from that on here. Yeah, I love that film. Yeah, I saw Mean Girls at least 3 times, if not 4 times in the theater. It's just movies that just resonate with me, and
that was Broadway too. They put it on Broadway. I think they put a play out version of it as well, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm still a big Lindsay Lohan fan, but I
Yeah.
think she had a hard time with the business. If I was to read into her,
Yeah.
I think the business got the best of her, and I'm hoping that she makes a comeback because Lindsay was really a talented actress.
Yes, I thought so too. And I
Hmm.
felt for her watching, I think unfortunately she had to go through all her changes in the public's eye. And I
Hmm.
think there was, and at the young ages, I felt for her. But I thought she also was talented and enjoyed and liked some of her stuff, you know,
Yeah,
coming up.
yeah. But love this movie. Like I said, I got the Blu-ray here of this movie. Yeah.
Well, I
Um,
just, what's funny is I was just what can I just I'm going to say something about that movie for a second. I was
sure.
just watching, my son made me watch Being when he was up for Thanksgiving. He made me watch Being John Malkovich, which I didn't even see
Love it.
in
Got it
99.
here.
And look who made a cast cameo. Sean Penn made a cameo performance in that. I think, touting John Malkovich's puppeteering style. I think Anderson Cooper does. A few different people do it, but I was sort of like, wow, there's Sean. There he is. Um,
I've
you know,
got that here too, being John
well, that's
Malkovich.
that's a that's a fascinating movie. I had never seen it. I mean, that was
I
just
saw
really
it in theaters.
you actually saw it in the theater. Wow. I
That
did
was
not.
1999. That was a good year for movies.
It's like the 90s were pretty much erased from my world because I was in a couple of things. I was in psychoanalytic training school. So I actually had to leave my New York Giants football for a decade, which I love. I left the whole music scene. So like I get through the 80s and then I can come back to where my kids grew up and then started to get sort of back into who they were into and then sort of my own stuff as well. But there was this decade where I like a lot of stuff is out, and not that I don't know some things from the 90s, but I play with band members right now that are 10 years younger than me, and they like know their 90s, and so I'm like, huh, who's that? Could you send me a link to that? So there's a hole there.
Well, I don't want to get too personal on here, but you said you were married to Amy Heckerling, who I remember as being a very attractive film director, and I've tried to get her on here and haven't had much luck. But nonetheless, she was one of those, along with Martha Coolidge, and then there's probably some other ones back there, female directors that really come into their own,
Yes.
and she's had a really good career making movies, and
She made some
um,
awesome movies. She was,
yeah, and
she was a talented soul. And I remember back when she would be interviewed, just after the movie as like one of the 5 female directors and how huge that was, and what she had to go through to get to that place also. I know she went to NYU Film School and she went to AFI director school, and she had her student film. She had another one she made at AFI, which I can't remember. It had I'm going to say, I don't want to say the wrong name, but it had somebody known in it. And I think that and her, good agent and the skills that she clearly had, suddenly when we were together before she made Fast Times, and suddenly one day her agent, said, Art Linson has an idea, whatever. We want to introduce you. And I remember because she was working on a lot of writing. She was writing something with the late Taylor Negron, who was in the
yeah.
movie, part of the comedy club, a guy named Richard Whitley, and she was working on writing some different things. And this is when I knew her. And she was looking for that first in, but her agent, got her this thing. Suddenly there it was, and boy, it was exciting because you could just sort of watch it go. So I kind of watched it went from literally from that level of where the casting and all those things, and wow, my wife is actually like going to Universal Studios and doing these things, and so I always joke we got married during the casting and divorced during the editing. So it was like it was a really a short period of time, but
Of Fast
um,
Times?
it was very fast times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think by the time the actual movie came out, um, I think I did not, I saw the dailies. I was watching the dailies go, often I'd go and get to see what they shot that day. And they were fun. She was fun. I mean, she would put on the director's chair my name, Reeves, Nevo, or David Brandt, depending on, or her, so they tried to help me feel part of it. And my name, if you look all over the movie, if you look in the dugout, Reeves, Nevo, and the Cinch is written across the dugout. I think in Damon's room, there's a poster. I'm getting mixed up because I had another friend in the business and he put our poster on the wall also. So there's the poster, and in the pizza, they call out Brandt as one of the people to get the pizza. So I could, there's a lot of little moments where we got sort of, and my mom is in it. My mom is the guidance counselor. She's not in the one that came out in the theater, but the cable version, the cable
Oh,
version.
the deleted scenes with
Yeah.
Judge Reinhold.
Yes, and he repeats his famous line, "I'm a single successful guy," and my mom Lois Brandt was the guidance counselor, and so she, I somehow found my way throughout various aspects of that movie, and it was like music met the movies when we first met. We both like dressing in black. We both had a connection with the AFI because my dad had been the chairman of the board of the American Film Institute for a couple of years, but we met. So the drummer at that time, Tony, had had a girlfriend who was Amy's best friend, and they took them down to Club 88, which is a real dive in Santa Monica or somewhere in California. And we used to have a lot of gigs at Club 88 and Blackie's and Madame Wong's, and we actually had some troubadour gigs. We were doing all original music, and she came down, and we soon after went to a movie. She took me to a Directors Guild movie. I think we saw Dogs of War. That was the movie we saw, and we were suddenly together, and it was, I mean, she was rooting for my band, I was rooting for her movies, and I'm not sure how mature I was or ready to really handle. I know I certainly gave her a hard time during some of the movie making. It's like, this person I was going to be with for the rest of my life, suddenly was going to be like really, I don't know, I was just not ready or mature enough to be dealing with all of that. But it certainly was a really, really exciting time. And I could, different parts of the interview, if we get to it, I'll share some parts of that. But it was really a fun time because I had my best friend at the time, Joe Shulkin, was the head writer of Fridays, which was, I guess, ABC's answer to Saturday Night Live, and a lot of people from Seinfeld came out of that, actually. And they would have the Clash, so we got to meet the Clash backstage. And I'd bring friends out, and we'd take them to Fridays, and we'd take them to see something at Universal where Amy was doing it. Then they'd come and play with our band in the rehearsal studio, and maybe see a gig. We'd go down to Mexico, go to San Diego, go to, whatever it was. So California was like an awesome trip to take for some of my buds at that time. And of course, the most important thing that we did was roller skating between Santa Monica Pier and Venice Pier every Saturday. That was the thing to do.
So is it safe to say that you're Amy Heckerling's therapist now?
No, by no means. I don't know how we could even, if anything, I don't even know where I could go with that question.
You know what? It's funny. You mentioned you're a therapist now. And I'm looking at the characters in Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yeah.
Out of all, here's a question you probably never been asked, but I'm going to ask it. Out of, let's just say you're sitting, you're at Ridgemont High, you're a therapist for the students. Out of all these characters, which one do you think you would have the most success getting through to?
Wow, that's a great question, actually. I love that question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Brian Backer,
Mm-hmm.
who is a sensitive one, I think there was probably a chance to reach him.
Yeah.
um, you know, I just by the way his character was portrayed, and to perhaps help bolster him up a bit, and have him have some successes and build upon those.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe Phoebe Cates, who certainly needed to hide behind having a boyfriend and being an adult and having to sort of face the reality of that, after that. I mean, maybe that cathartic experience for her would have helped her grow some from that, and learn that she could actually be herself and don't have to have such, but that's a high school thing too. I think it's not necessarily a personality thing, but it's both, it's both. Who else? I mean, the Rat, man. I mean, the Rat's gonna know. He knew what he needed. He knew what he had, and so he's probably not going to shift that much because, well, although he got his comeuppance, didn't he? In a way, I don't know the
But
comeuppance.
you're thinking about Damone, I think.
I mean, Damone, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait? But it's the Rat
Rat was Brian Backer.
that's Brian Backer. I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean that's how you guys watch this and are around it so much. I maybe haven't watched this movie in a decade, so
Mm-hmm.
although I can tell you lots of details about it, or side things about it, I'm not as close to it. Although I love some of the lines there, I use them to this day. Some of them, know it, learn it, live it, or there's some great lines in it. Of course, gnarly.
I'm assuming that
And Sean
Spicoli.
Penn, should we just, we're going to say Spicoli should, I mean, man, is he like, would he go to therapy? What would make him, what would he be mandated to therapy so that, he would be like, and then,
I imagine Mr. Hand would go to therapy after every class.
by the way, going to dinner with Mr. Hand was really excited because I grew up with My Favorite Martian.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe he was, you correct me if I'm wrong, but he was in South Pacific.
Yep,
yeah.
I
So
believe so. Yep.
I was really excited about that. And I got to in that ilk of older classic things, I got to take Amy to one of my father's cronies, Robert Wise, who I'm sure
Mhm.
you've heard of,
I know who Robert
and
Wise
I got
is.
to
Yep.
take him to dinner over there. We were both taken by my father to that one. So that was exciting. But Ray Walston, he was a character, and I think he was perfect in that movie. He was just perfect in that movie. And we got to go to dinner
Aloha.
with him. Aloha, Mr. Han. Yeah.
My name is Mr. Hand.
Wait a minute. Where's my sneaker? I got it like okay.
Yeah. Oh boy.
You know,
Let's talk.
yeah,
Huh?
you go. I was just gonna go from there, but you tell me where you were gonna just head.
Well, I was going to say let's talk a little bit about the cast here because this movie was responsible for launching a lot of careers. Like, for example,
Yes.
Sean Penn playing Jeff Spicoli, iconic role, was influential. You can see it all over Wayne's World, for example, but Spicoli was an influential character.
So wait a
I,
second. Can I go back
yep.
and forth? So let's think about this because Cheech and Chong and their album when I was in college were coming out. So
Hmm.
there certainly was pot humor and kind of like um but he see I think what happened is he infused it with Valley talk, some original form of Valley talk along with you know
Surfer.
Surfer California, thank you, that's even more accurate than Valley, definitely. And with the pot stuff that was going on, and also it's the fact that it really came a long way, the drug culture in the 70s, over the 70s. So I think there was a whole lot of stuff confluencing to that character, and then his brilliance and his living in character, and he had the right face, I mean the right structural face, the costume, the hair. It was a tremendous role. And he would, by the way, he would come down to our gigs. His brother was in Gabriel and Doll Congress. I think he may have been Gabriel. I don't know. But he was into the music scene because his brother was into it, and he really was a real fan of ours. He'd come down for a few gigs, and he would come in mostly in character, even though not with the hair. But he'd come and kind of be there. But he was himself. He was a really good guy, and he really was friendly to our band. And I mean, I think so I always feel like sort of a familiarity with him, even though I really haven't had a lot of contact with him over the years. But we were really all, it was all part of, when you work in a movie for a year or so, you really are all part of a family in a way.
And who would have thought? And
But
I
he
think
really
Sean Penn's, huh?
well, you were talking about the trajectory of different actors. Yeah.
Yeah, Sean Penn. You look at Fast Times at Ridgemont High, great performance by Sean Penn. But when you look at him in 1982, it's like, who'd have thought he'd go on to win two Best Actor Academy Awards, you know?
I'm not totally surprised, but nobody would have thought then that any of this would have gone there. But Kevin Costner, I mean, there were people in there. But Sean Penn, I mean, I know he married Madonna. He punched out a photographer. He was in some really interesting roles, and I think what he did when his talent allowed this. I mean, he's from an acting family, but not that that means anything, but his talent allowed him to take on very different roles. So he wasn't typecast into one particular way. He really was able to become serious. And that's not easy for somebody to do who was Spicoli to suddenly become a non-Spicoli. I'm sure there are plenty of examples, but it seems to me that he really could find himself in different roles. And he's been in some interesting movies too.
I would love to see, and I know he's been asked and he's been against it, but I wouldn't mind seeing what Spicoli would be doing in 2022. I would
Yeah.
love to see his take on it, not the studios. I would love to see him do a movie
Well,
of Spicoli now.
I see what you mean. You mean like some interpretation of who Spicoli would have become now.
Yeah.
I mean, what a great idea. I love that idea. I know he was working he was over in the Ukraine doing some documentary there. And so I know he's I don't know. And I did, there was some special. I don't really follow this too much, but somehow people send me things. So I get sent anytime we're on TV, somebody sends me from wherever they are, and from Florida, from wherever it is. Oh, here, look, I'm in a bar and that's what's playing. There you are on the thing. But people also send me stuff having to do with Fast Times. And somebody sent me something where Amy, he, and a few other of the actors and actresses were at some awards, and they all got up there at once and were doing some kind of they were just sort of reminiscing about it, or honoring it as a movie. I don't remember what the auspice was, but and there he was there, and he actually did a quick imitation of Spicoli doing it. But what an awesome idea! I mean, then they should hire me as a therapist to kind of help with
There you go.
who he might have become. I'll take that role.
There you go.
I'll go there.
There you
Yeah,
go. And Forrest Whitaker went on to
my
win an
God,
Academy Award.
and brilliant. I mean, brilliant actor.
You don't want him in the therapy room as that football player, though.
Lincoln Jefferson. What am I thinking of? The something game. Um the the Lion game, the something game. He was a brilliant performance. One of my favorite of his performances. It'll come to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's really done some major stuff. Now, who else? Who else? But he was. I mean, Lincoln Jefferson. You don't mess with Lincoln Jefferson.
Yeah.
And I love when he's in the car. When the other guy and him are in the car, and they're in his car, and like, oh my God, there's just who would have thought of that?
Yeah, Spicoli's not sweating it.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, they're busy talking about Bo Derek's tits or something like that, which at that period was an important phenomenon, I guess.
You're going, make up your mind, dude. Is he going to shit, or is he gonna,
That was, some of the stuff is brilliant, and some of the stuff comes right out of Amy's life. For example, the Diet Coke. I'll have a Diet Coke with no ice, I think, and one of the young ladies asks for it at wherever they are. Or no, actually, right on the date, on the first date. It's not, there's right, or is it Brian Backer taking Damone's advice?
Yeah.
One of those, but he says, I'll have a diet, and that was Amy's drink, and wherever she would go, Diet Coke with no ice. Which I then took up myself over these years,
Yep.
as the go-to beverage. Yeah. But so
And
many others
another,
too. I mean, Judge Reinhold had a whole trajectory. And many actors had other movies after. Some of the surfer dudes.
Jennifer Jason Leigh finally, when Hateful Eight come out, finally got an Oscar nomination. Why it hadn't happened sooner, I don't know.
Yeah. She was in. I've seen a couple of things with her. I don't know if I saw Hateful Eight. I saw other things, and I was so sad about her dad. And I grew up with Vic Morrow doing, watching combat growing up as a kid. So I kind of was aware of that. Although I didn't know when we were doing the movie. I don't think I was aware until a lot later that she was Vic Morrow's daughter. I mean, they were just looking for people that had a certain age and a certain, and then had a certain look. They were old enough to do the movie and do the scenes, but young enough to look like they fit the role, I think, was the part of the auspice. And they had to have, just look like the right parts.
One of my favorite moments in the movie was between Judge Reinhold and Jennifer Jason Leigh, of course, a brother and sister,
Right.
because you got the scene where Jennifer's character is going off to have an abortion, which is a touchy subject, but it's something that teenagers have dealt with. When I graduated high school, the same stuff was going on that was going on in Fast Times at Ridgemont High,
So
you know.
real.
But um, I like it when she says to her brother, played by Reinhold, that she's going bowling with friends. And he drops her off, and he kind of sees her do a reverse in his rearview mirror. And I like it when she comes out to the parking lot and there's Judge Reinhold waiting
Yeah,
for her.
that was so
And
sweet. You
the
just brought that all
moment,
back to me.
I love that moment between them, and he goes, you're not going to tell me who did it, And rather than bash her, you know. He just says, you know, you want something to eat. Like he takes care of his sister. That is a moment in the movie. It's always touched me, that scene.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you just resurrected that memory in my brain because that was it was, really that whole sequence from the beginning where she lies to him because she doesn't want to, go there, but to the turnaround and his noticing it. Yeah, it was beautiful. Beautiful
Yeah,
moment. And it was, and that, and it, I mean, in all that you go through, the vulnerability, I think part of what you're also somewhat alluding to is the vulnerability of the characters. I mean, everybody kind of has their teen bravado going on, but they also have this other side that's growing up and trying to figure it out and insecure. We all are. And so that universalizes some of these things. And we do care about what happens to our sister. And we do, even though we're mad at them and we know they've done something wrong, whatever, we also care about them, and to express that is, that's vulnerability too, in a
yeah.
way.
And of course, we cannot forget about Phoebe Cates. I don't know whether she's trying to live it down, but that scene of her coming out of the pool, I don't want to sound perverse. I want to be respectful, but they say that is the most paused moment in movie history on these VHS tapes. And
uh,
um,
well, I think, and the fact that it slowed down the music, if I recall, the music and the whole thing went into slow motion as well, and everything about it was magical and sexual fantasical or whatever, fantastical. So it really was there. But yes, I am not surprised, although, well, you could look at it and say they certainly, well, the embarrassment of Judge Reinhold looking out the window certainly was a nice corollary with that. you know.
don't they ever effing knock anymore?
Great line. Great line. I
The
don't know.
look on her face too, because apparently he had something in his hand to get her to react doing that scene. I don't recall now what it was, but her reaction.
I mean, something in her hand, off camera or on camera?
No, in his hand. I don't know what he had apparently when he was masturbating, and she comes in the washroom, and I
But
forget
it was
now because it's been
whatever
a
it was,
while.
a tissue or something. It was clear though that it made it clear what was going on, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but
Okay.
it
Yeah, yeah,
didn't
yeah.
show what he actually had, and I forget now. It's been a while since I listened to that interview, but her reaction, he did
Yeah, yeah.
something to get the right reaction out of her, and it was
It,
just
it
absolutely
worked.
perfect. Yeah,
It worked.
you
Yeah, that
know,
when you think about it, the movie was star-studded, not with stars, but with moments. I mean, just
yep,
awesome moments, like when he was the director of Martin Brest, and he was the
yep.
director of of Going in Style, maybe. Well, he was the director of something. Um,
Beverly Hills Cop.
well, but no, no, that was well, maybe, but Martin Brest was the director of something else too that I'm just
Hmm.
not getting the right name, but something huge. Uh, but when he's pulling, wasn't wait a minute, I'm mixing them up because there's also the guy that Vincent, the guy was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But who was the biology guy? That was Martin Brest, right?
Oh, biology guy was
Vincent Capsielli. I can't
Vince.
think.
Yeah, Vincent. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but yeah, I know who you're referring to.
Oh, he was well. I loved him in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That was like my
And
favorite.
he's no longer with us either.
No, no,
Vincent's
Scaffielli.
Scavawell, Welly,
Yeah,
Mr.
something like that.
Vargas.
Yeah, Mr. Vargas. But Martin Brest was the biology teacher, right? And they were doing the dissection, and then they pull it out, and Spicoli goes gnarly or something like that, or
No,
ew.
that was
Am I mixing them up?
Vincent. That
That
was
was
Vincent.
Vincent.
That's
Okay, yeah,
Mr.
you're right.
Vargas. Yeah, Mr.
Okay, you're right. You're
Vargas.
right. So wait, well, what was Martin Brest then? What did he do? Who was he?
I'm looking up here because I don't recall him.
I'm supposed.
Oh, Dr. Miller.
Yeah, but
Dr. Miller. He's listed as Dr. Miller.
and do we know what Dr. Miller? Can we remember what Dr. Miller did in the
It's
movie?
probably at the hospital scene where Sean Penn goes gnarly.
Okay, there's something, anyway, there's a lot of really incredible moments, throughout it when you really think about it. Every moment is like, is a study of its own right. And, I will say, I think I mentioned this on the only other time I got interviewed about this a few months ago. I know Amy, when she was getting ready before she got the movie and during the movie, she'd get up every morning and she'd be looking at Scorsese's angles because she loves Scorsese, and she'd be and other people as well, but she'd really study those angles, and you could tell she was a student and she was looking for what these guys did to get what they got, and so I think that each moment was captured with that kind of care. And I remember Matt something was the guy, behind the camera, and he was clearly, these guys were the best. They were the best.
How much were you on set for this? Brown, like how much did you actually see filmed outside your scene?
Not a lot. I was there. I went there at different moments. I would come at the end of the day for casting. And
Hmm.
you mean as a band, not as a husband, but as a band, you mean?
As a husband, yeah.
Oh, well, as a husband, what I said. So and I think I once went to the mall where they were doing the mall, but there was a couple of malls being used, so I don't remember which one. There was one mall I went to. I certainly went to some of the locations when they were doing location scouting. I was really there at the earlier part of it. Um, I did not. I would get to see the dailies, and they were really exciting to watch the football game and watch all the footage of that over, and then to see what they edited it to was really amazing. During our thing, we were there for like I want to say we did 135 minutes or 170 minutes total in that gym or something like that. I recall that figure. So it took a few days, and you would get your I forget what they call it in the movie business when you get the little stipend to give you lunch or little lunch money or something. So I remember getting that, and that was like big time for us, and hanging out with the trailers and all of that. And that was really fun. And we got to play the cast party at Universal, and that was really one of our best gigs. And we got to be ourselves and play our own music. But then the music, we were in the studio in Westlake Audio in Michael Jackson's Thriller Studio A, recording this with Bob Distocki and Ed Cherney, the late Ed Cherney, unfortunately, brilliant engineer and producer. But and they did three songs. They did Wooly Bully, Life in the Fast Lane, and they did Third World Man by Steely Dan. And we had talked about it. Amy had talked about it with her people to get it clearance, but they wouldn't let it go for be the slow dance, and probably wouldn't have been the most appropriate third dance. But I have a recording of it, and I intend to put that out on one of my YouTubes soon. In fact, I'm working on video of. I don't want to give it away, but I have a really cool idea to put behind it. So eventually, I'm going to get all three of our full recordings of those songs out there. Only one of them is out there at the moment.
There you go.
But
Yeah, though
yeah, no,
there
you
was
go.
a lot of nice bit parts in this. Like I said, I've interviewed Kelly Maroney, and I love her in this. I actually got some autographs of her here too because I'm still in touch. Um, Amanda Wyss. I don't know why would Judge Reinhold want to break up with Amanda?
I guess he took one look at Nancy Wilson in the car when she looked at him, and that was it.
Oh,
No.
well, okay. Okay, I'll give you that. Yeah, Nancy Wilson. That's another one of those key moments in the
Key
film.
moment.
Yeah.
We got to meet Nancy Cameron. There was some party, and Cameron Crowe was there, and I think some of the members of Heart and Nancy Wilson, and my band was there. The whole band was there, and we all got to hang around with Nancy and Cameron for that afternoon. Cameron was a really nice guy, just a good guy. You
Let's
can't
talk
not
about
like
Cameron
him.
Crowe because he's really gone on. He's had
Oh yeah,
uh, a really wonderful career as a filmmaker, like Almost Famous,
Almost Famous is the
Vanilla Sky. He's done some really good stuff, but I remember when I was interviewing Kelly Maroney and we are talking about the book that Fast Times is based on, that and the whole story about Rolling Stone and
well,
Cameron Crowe
he was
going,
writing since he was like 16 at Rolling Stone,
yeah,
right? Yeah, go ahead.
and he goes undercover at the high
Yeah, yeah.
school and all this stuff, and I guess the Fast Times book is out of print. And
Is that
Kelly
right?
was
You can't
saying,
get it? I have a copy.
"Do ya?"
Yeah, I do.
Kelly
actually
Maroney
have a,
said she could just kick herself because she said she doesn't have her copy anymore. And, you know,
I have books because I moved, so I don't know if I put mine up here with my, yeah, I think it is right
oh,
here.
wow. Let's get a look at that. Wow.
I can't believe it happens to be right here, but I do. And
Oh,
I
wow. Let's get a look at
no
that.
signatures, but this was like the original book.
Oh, wow.
um, and there's Cameron Crowe,
Yep.
the young Cameron Crowe writing it. That's pretty much what he looked like when I saw him. Yeah, and then he goes, that's Spicoli over there trying hard to welcome to the lunch court. That's Spicoli over there trying hard to unwrap a bologna sandwich. It goes on and on. But anyway, yeah, that's the original one. I
Oh,
actually don't have the
wow.
Blu-ray. I have the VHS. That's the last one I got of it. um, I have a script, although well, I don't have it anymore. Somebody else now owns it, but I had the original script, and I had the angle, like it's a book of all the angles. So I'm not getting that. There's a word for that kind of a book.
Still shots?
No,
Oh, what do they call that?
I don't know. I'm just my brain is.
Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. But it's that kind of, it's that log. It's a thick black book. Every scene is depicted in what angle, where the shot's going to be, who's in it, da 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 da. And that was fun to have. I kept it for like 30, 40 years. And then there was a real fanatic friend of mine who just loves this stuff. And I gave him a few different things from the movie that were,
Oh, yeah.
what am I going to do with all this stuff? But at a certain point,
There you go.
I kept certain pictures and certain things from those days. But
You
and it was,
passed
I
them
have to
down to
say,
the twins.
well, yes, they, if, one's kids, you don't know what they'll be interested in. I have all these collections of political buttons and this and that and the other thing. And they're their own people. And so you gotta, you think, let's see what they want. So of course I want my name to go down in their history, but I'm dad, I'm just dad. So I've humbly accepted my role, and we'll see. They honor certain aspects of our histories.
So, what did your kids think of Fast Times at Ridgemont High?
I think they liked it. I thought they thought it was a good movie. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know whether, I'm trying to remember, did they think it was somewhat dated? Um, or not. But I think, no, I think it stood, and I think they were not, they didn't grow up in this. Pot was in a different place, let's say, and all of that stuff. And they grew up with Mean Girls. I think they would imitate Valley Talk sometimes, because in their own way. I mean, people would say things, not certain expressions. So some of it I was able to say, like, well, the Vans and some of that kind of talk. That's where that stuff came from. That came from that movie at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think they really liked it. I think it was cool to see their dad. They were kind of young. They're not going to let me know that they're overly impressed about anything, unless it's what they bring to the table.
Yeah.
Kids, they're great
So,
kids.
yeah. And
Yeah.
you've had a lot of great cameos in the Taylor Negron, of course, playing the pizza guy. You had
By the
Eric
way,
Stoltz.
before we go there, let me just say something about one of my both kids. But both kids love music. Both kids have made music or
Mm-hmm.
YouTube, things like that. One kid got her name is Eden. She was James. Her name is Eden now. Eden made her. She was the 13th finalist in the when Obama was president in the White House Film Festival, and made a film called Changes, or I'm blanking on everything today. But she got to go to the White House and meet Obama. It was really exciting. And it's the South by South Lawn or some kind of festival there that they had. And so her brother, my wife, and her went there. They only had 3 tickets, so I deferred. And she also won the Montclair Film Festival second. So she was into film for a while. Then she became an English major, where she is right now. She wants to be a professor down the line. And my son is into coding and making crazy YouTubes, and he's like really got a like operatic voice, and he's a really bright kid. So it's neat to watch them kind of go through their own teens, their own 20s, the internet generation, memes, all this stuff that's out there now, they're keeping me young and keeping me hip to some of what's going on. So
Oh yeah.
thankful to that. Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I grew up with a very different era than today, but
Sure.
nonetheless, I certainly like I was born in the early 70s, so I'm very I remember a little bit of the 70s. I remember the 80s really well. And certainly movies like this, with their soundtracks and whatnot, bring forth a lot of memories. Teen movies in particular do that well.
Yes, that's a good point. They evoke
Yep.
a time. It's like a smell can evoke a time or a look or something, and but a movie can really do that. When you saw a different movie, like with The Graduate, is like that for me.
Oh, I've done a
Oh my
couple
God.
of, I've done some interviews from The Graduate, three people.
Oh wow. Who did you interview from The Graduate?
I have William Daniels on, who, of course, was the dad. I had Wayne Stam on, who you see very briefly was one of the kids when Dustin Hoffman is at that hotel and he goes into where that family reunion is. Well, Wayne Stam is a little boy in it.
I managed
Um,
I managed a theater, and when I was like 18 or something, and and because my father was in the movie theater business, and I managed a theater, and they played that movie, and I must have seen it 50 or 60 times, and I could
oh
tell,
yeah,
like some people can do fast times. I could back then tell you every line in that movie, and that's how meaningful it was. And the music, speaking of marriage of music to it, I mean, Simon and Garfunkel's
yep.
music couldn't have been a better placement of music
I've
to the.
got that movie here too. I've had
Yeah.
Lainey Miller on as well,
Who was
and
she?
she was the stripper in that scene
Oh wow.
that had the tassels on her
Yeah,
on
but
her breast.
remind me. This has been years now for that movie too.
Because Dustin Hoffman took Catherine Ross to
Oh
this.
God.
Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay, wow, wow. You get into some interesting angles into these
Well,
films.
Lainey was interesting because her husband was Dick Miller. Dick Miller was in a lot of the Roger Corman movies. He was Mr. Futterman in Gremlins.
Okay, okay.
I reached out to get Dick Miller on the show. I had him on 5 months before he passed. He passed away at the age of
Oh,
90. But I
wow.
had him on 5 months before, and his wife set it up. And his wife was Lainey, and I was like, "Wow, she was in The Graduate." So that was interesting.
That is interesting. I would, who would have known the, and now the scenes that as you say them, they come back into my head. I was thinking about one great interview might be that guy. I don't know if he's alive anymore, but the landlord, because he had that way of like sort of making little spittle in his mouth or whatever, and it just that little expression of disgust about the tenants, and
Yeah.
just that whole thing. What a great movie! But yeah, movies that depict our times. So many. I mean, Woodstock was iconic, and you see that it takes you right back to, especially because I grew up during, when that was happening. All kinds of movies like that. But then there's the teen movies, of course. I
Oh
mean, let's
yeah.
go back further and go to 101 Dalmatians. That brings you back too to a certain. And I saw the original of those. I believe all
I
those.
gotta say, love. I'm a huge Emma Stone fan. Loved her as
Yeah.
Cruella.
Oh wow. So because was that the second coming of 101 Dalmatians?
No, she played the live action version of Cruella. That
Okay.
was a movie that came out last year, and
Oh, Cruella. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. I mean, I didn't see it, but now I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I love
I'm
Emma
so
Stone.
I'm so not. You're such a movie buff, and I'm a sieve. I watch something. My wife, my kids remember every name, so I'm always like, who is that? Who is that? What did they do again? What did they in? I get the movie. If I see it twice, I really hold on to it. And I love watching movies, but we'll go to film festivals, see 10, and I'm like, you know, I remember them. I remember something that really stood out to me, but I'm terrible with names. Much
Mhm.
better with musicians and stuff like that, or
Yeah.
psychoanalysis.
Well,
uh,
give me a little background of with you and being a musician. Was that something you always wanted to do growing up?
I think I always beat I beat the drum. Let me just ask you a question. I know we're being recorded. Is there any way to pause the recording for a moment so I can ask you a
Sure,
question?
sure. Just a sec. I'm going to pause it right now. Okay, you're back now.
Thank you. What was the somebody was at my door, so I
Yeah.
didn't see what it was. What was the question you were just leaving off with?
Well, growing up, your background, and did you always want to be a
Right.
musician? And another thing I
Right.
always ask musician is what instrument grabbed them growing up too.
So interesting. I mean, like many people, I had a Victrola when I first grew up, and and so I would buy like this. You ever heard of the Circle? Paul Simon was part of the CYRC. They did Red Rubber Ball. I buy
Mhm.
that. I bought Leslie Gore songs. She's a Fool. The Beatles came out with "I Want to Hold Your Hand." She Loves You, and I
Love
would.
that song.
Oh my God. I mean, I still have I have a nice 45 collection. I have all those. And then my cousins passed on their 45. So I also was picking up Sam Cooke. I have Doris Day singing Que Sera. I've got some really cool 45s. Um, and the Four Preps, this and that. But I would sit there and take a drumstick and beat on top of the Victrola, or things near it. And for some reason, I felt like I just loved that. I just loved being a part of that and that expression. And then I'd go, I started to learn guitar, and I take my guitar into my bathroom because when my brothers were born, I got moved up to an attic room. So I take my guitar up in front of this mirror and close myself in, and I would be playing like, in front of this mirror. So there was some part of me that liked being the rock and roll guy as well. Um, and I became like, I would play at camps and I could play every Monkey song, every Beatles song, this and that. And I was always the guy they'd give the guitar to. In high school, I'd sit around looking sort of brooding and playing like folk songs and stuff from Phil Oakes or whatever it could be. And then Elton John started to get famous, just to play the piano a little bit. But I did study the accordion growing up. I studied the piano a little bit. I got to the little bit of classical piano, a lot of guitar, the drums, clarinet in elementary school band. So music was a part of it. My dad played boogie woogie. My mom was operatic and had a coloratura soprano voice and could also play piano. But my dad could sit there and play show tunes and folk songs, and everybody would sit around and sing around the piano. So we grew up with music being in our family, just like I do with my kids now. And so then somewhere right out, went to college, didn't know what I was going to be. I got a Martin guitar, um, and would play like every night. That was what I was there for. I was a math major ostensibly, but I was there playing guitar and really learning about it. And we had a band called Ivan, Ian, and Averill, and we were sort of like, I don't know, it was original. It was all original music, some covers, but mostly original. And it was somewhere in between Crosby, Stills, and Nash, but with some really kind of interesting rhythms, or a kind of Baroque folk, not quite Leo Kottke, but pre-New Age George Winston, this kind of stuff. So an odd collection of music. And I think I loved Bob Dylan. That was my really early Simon & Garfunkel, Bob Dylan, Santana, the Doors. These are the people I grew up with. And I would go see some of them at the Schaefer Festival in New York, or just different things along the way. Early concerts of the Byrds and Hendrix I saw when I was 14 at the Hollywood Bowl, Bangladesh concert, a lot of the Grateful Dead, later high school and early college. Just those are some influences. And then in college, I kind of finished my math major, finished college, and was a guitar teacher for a year in New York City. Long story short, decided I wanted to become a musician. I wanted to write songs, and I think I'm going to LA. And I had, I didn't have a sense of time, a voice, and I slowly went through a 5-year mill of finding musicians and going through different band members, playing in caves, getting our first gig, getting a management deal, and we suddenly started to sound like a band. And we were getting the gigs. We got a Saturday night gig at the Troubadour, had a regular stay at Blackie's, had a production deal or two. And so by the time I got to the movie, we were pretty tight. And in fact, we had really professional people playing. So that was what was hard. It was hard to keep them reined in. Because one guy went and played with Taxi. Another guy was with a group called Factor 4. Another guy was with it was a famous group back then. I can't, but everybody was like, "Come on, guys, we got to play in the studio here. I got a date for us. I got a gig. When are we going to practice?" And everybody was kind of getting too big for their britches, or just finding their own britches, I should probably just say. And so we made an album after the movie. It was sort of my divorce album, if you were, and I liked it, but I didn't know what to do with it, and I wasn't mature enough or had a business head on me. So eventually, we got a production deal, and that was with Michael Ruff, who was a piano player. He played piano on it of Ricky Lee Jones. It was really nice. I still have those tracks, but was not able to finish them. I don't know, writer's block, things came up, knowing I was not going to probably stay in the business. It was just you could feel a shift was occurring, and a need for a shift was occurring. I did get accepted to the New Christie Minstrels on one of their last incarnations, and I turned that down. I was actually offered to go on a 1-year CBS tour with the New Christie Minstrels as their 7th member, sort of a mascot. And I remember auditioning and feeling good about it, but they all read music and they were all, and I felt like, I'm just like, I'm a front man. I'm not meant to. It was a group of frontmen, but they weren't putting out. They used to put out Kenny Rogers. They put out a lot of people in their time, but they weren't doing that anymore. Sid Garris was sort of going downhill at that point, with them and his other band. And I just, and at that point I left the business. I actually ended up going to work for $5 an hour for John Dean, who was Nixon's lawyer, who kind of ratted on Nixon during the Watergate days. And they put me up and let me work up there. And I was just trying to figure out like how to go from 0 to 1. What am I going to do? And I did. Then I met my wife years later, went through the corporate world, went into social work school, went to therapy, so got some help from myself and all that was going. And then I met my wife, and we were doing open mics she and I still play here and there, but we were doing open mics in Hoboken, had a regular stint there, loved it. And then later, like about 10 years ago, I started to make these YouTubes. Let's just bring you full circle. And so I do mostly cover songs, but my own arrangements, some original, but mostly cover. And I would call on old musicians that I had from California, because now with the advent of Logic Pro and GarageBand, you can have people send you their WAV files or this and that. And I learned how to use Logic Pro during COVID, and I was using GarageBand before that. And then I would say, okay, now I want to make a video for this. So I get my kid to act in it or me, just some stupid concoction. And they've evolved a little. I kind of stopped that a few months ago, but I am going to be working on some more soon. And so the last 4 or 5 were actually more interesting videos. The rest are sort of really odd concoctions of very amateur, like totally amateur, but the music behind them was pretty good. And I'm into art now. I actually have been taking art lessons and drawing. I'm playing pickleball. I'm still partially practicing my practice. I'm partially retired, and I'm trying to figure out what the next third is going to be, but it's definitely going to be an adventure.
There you go.
I got a lot of energy still for a lot of stuff. So I'm just trying to figure out sort of where things are going to be now. And musical.
Well, before we wrap this up, I wanted to get the feeling, the atmosphere when you did the prom scene in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and you had all the students there, and they were, you had Spicoli on stage, Sean Penn. And I know you said it was a long filming process. Talk about the atmosphere and working with Sean and any of the other actors in that scene. Any stories you have from that?
I'm sorry, so you're talking about the prom scene itself?
Yeah.
Sure. I have a couple of things to say about that. Let me just say, I'm going back to one thing. I mean, I forget that when I tell you the trajectory of music, becoming a psychoanalyst became really important. And I went to 2 years of master's in social work. And I then went into practice at agencies and stuff like that, and then eventually went back to psychoanalytic training for 4 years, and got my I have a certificate in psychoanalysis, but it's in private practice for like 20 some odd years, 7 years. So I, there's been so many other things besides music. Music has always been an art, has always been an accompaniment to what I do, but it's not the main thing that I do. I just wanted to say that. But
Yep.
With respect to the prom scene, I mean, one of the things that stands out the most is Pam Springsteen standing in front of me in the red and white striped garb, and knowing who she was, and just what a nice person she was. But and that was exciting because I grew up. I got to see Springsteen when I in 1974 at my college, and wow,
Hmm.
what a show. So that was one thing, and I guess just the vibe, man, that the vibe in that place. Every day they would crank up the music. We would either sync to it or just play it live, and they would dance to it and whatever. And we were all plugged in. All our equipment was there, and we were the vibe behind that scene. I mean, we were that song and that energy was helping generate all of that. And if we didn't know all the little inner things were going on, we did have to go over that scene where he comes up and goes over a couple of times, and that was sure fun to be. But I didn't know who Sean Penn really was at that point. I just thought he was this cool guy doing this thing with his Piccoli stuff. So it was really, we were just part of this whole, we were part of a prom. It really felt like we were at a prom. I mean, that's what was the brilliance of Amy's work, and what they did is we were really at the prom, man. you know and who knew
What do
what
you
was going
think?
on in the bathroom outside of there, and in the high school, stuff that was all getting concluded at
Yeah.
that juncture. Yeah.
What do you think? 40 years later in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, it still
Yeah.
resonates.
Well, it does, and that it became a cult classic is a tribute to everybody in the movie. And Cameron and Amy and all the big players in the movie, and and I mean, my God, people, I can't even believe it. There was a slight drop off about 10 years ago where you would say it and everybody knew the movie you were in. And oh yeah, well, I was in this, Fast Times or whatever. And then it became like it was like sort of people start forgetting who the Beatles were. They don't know, they didn't grow up around it or even after the aftermath. But then it seemed to have a resurgence around the 35th anniversary. You're seeing more and more people again know about it again. Um, we were going to play something. We were invited to play two different things for the 35th anniversary, one in Connecticut and one in California. And just couldn't, how do you get the whole band together? We couldn't even know where the drummer was at that point, but we did find him eventually. Um, so who knows? Maybe there's a Reeves, Nevo, and the Cinch Fast Times reunion to come. We'll see.
Do you ever get to do the cons or conventions?
I haven't done anything like that.
Uh,
I'm a little, it may not seem it from my interviewing here, but I'm a little shy about all of that stuff.
hmm.
Um, I'm kind of. It's nice to say it from afar and say, "Oh yeah, I knew this guy, I met this guy, and at a dinner or something like that." But I know there's all these sites on Facebook that are fast times aficionados and things like that, and I've joined and made comments. I think Robert Romanus has the Robert Romanus Appreciation Society. There's a lot of people that really cherish and really, really raise this movie to a place. I think it was wonderful, and I'm happy for that. Happy for that exposure, not for me, but for the movie and for those times. But
Yeah.
yeah, and thank you.
Well,
And by the way, I love your interviewing. You really asked some good questions. You made me think a little bit, and you have I like your take. You have a more sensitive approach, to the movies themselves and the things going on around them. So I look forward to hearing more of you.
well, you know what? I really try hard. You're my fourth guest from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and
That's
I hope to
awesome.
get more. Um, I don't know whether I'll get Amy to come on here or not. I'd love to have her on because she's done more than just this that I wouldn't mind talking about. Um,
She
I
did
know I
Johnny
get,
Dangerously. She did Johnny Dangerously. Look Who's Talking. She did a home Chevy Chase's European Vacation.
yeah,
Clueless. She's done a lot of stuff. Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to talk to Amy. There's so many. Like I know we got connected through Tommy Kovac, and I think he's interviewed more people from this movie. I think he had Robert Romanus on here as
Yes.
Damone, and
And I think
I haven't had him.
Scott Thompson also.
Yeah, I haven't had any of them on here yet. And so I don't know. We'll see. But
Well, I think they would be lucky to get you to interview them because I honestly, of all the people, I'm not comparing, but I just felt like, you have a nice breadth on that period of time and a good style. I think they would be in good hands. Let me just say that.
well, I
I
grew
can,
up with it. Like I said, there's a lot of music in this movie. I remember when it came out. This was like the dawn of MTV. I remember that, you know. I remember when a lot of this music came out. I remember it being on the radio. and
I
stuff
want
like that.
my MTV.
Yep,
Yeah, Dire
yep,
Straits, all that stuff was happening just about then. That's true. That's true. To really place this in its historical perspective, so much was really, some a lot of stuff was new then, and there was no
yep.
cell phone. Really, no cell phones. You don't see a cell phone in that movie.
Nope.
Whenever I watch movies with my kids, I'm always saying, right, look at the cell phone style. Look computers, no computers. What's going on. I remember buying in '83, right after the movie, I bought my first Atari 800 XL. I have a nerdy computer side of me. And I actually was, learned how to program in BASIC and was, not just games. And it was like really cool. Commodore Apple II was out. And then look where that went. By '84, I had my first, I used my first Macintosh up at John Dean's office, and 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 then like soon after I had my first Mac Plus. I mean, it's just amazing where all this has gone to,
Yeah.
in a way.
That, and I think Tommy had one of the Pat Benatar girls on too. So you know, he's thrown some people my way, and I've thrown some people
Are
his
you?
way. So
Do you? I'm going to show you something. Do you know him? I mean, do you know Tommy, or just through this stuff?
just through this, like I know
This is the
Tommy
guitar.
Kovac, I don't know personally. I know through Facebook. There's a lot of podcasters. We kind of circulate back and forth. We're like our own little community.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so out of it. My wife listens to podcasts. I mean, she is. I've listened through her and through other people. I'm sort of getting into them more now, but I've been a little out of the loop. So I don't even like Tommy. When I did the interview with him, he said, "Yeah, it's clear." Afterwards, he said, "It's clear you've never done a podcast before, or whatever." I'm not quite sure exactly what he meant, but I think I get the idea. So I hope I was a little smoother here. But it's this is sort of new to me to even be talking about this stuff. It was a great time. It was a wonderful period of time in 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 my life, those few years, as much as it also had the trauma of divorce and all of that going on. And it was just so exciting. It was great. They were great times. And thank God I've had other lives afterwards with great times, and then other lives after that. And like I say, I intend to continue. But hey, I love to honor those times as well, and I appreciate your doing so. This is the guitar that was in that movie, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Little taste of that. But yeah, I still play this guitar in my band. We have a band now called the Arthritics.
Oh,
um, and
nice.
we do a lot of cover stuff. We did our third gig. And so it's like starting all over again, like John Lennon said, um, you know, in a way. Well, listen, so I guess maybe we'll get to meet again here. And when I'm
You
up in
know what?
California.
I just got an idea. Sometime down the road, I don't know when, depending on my schedule, I wouldn't mind having you and your band do a Zoom.
You mean my new band or my old band?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Oh, you
We
mean
could
like a
do the old band and we could do the new band. It doesn't
it
matter.
would be kind of cool to get everybody from the Reeves Neve on the Cinch band. Like, because I know Eric would do it. David Doolittle probably would do it. He was a drummer. David Resnick might do it. He's kind of made it in the music business. He's gone on to have much success in the music business. And Tom Browley was the piano player. So those five, it'd be kind of neat to have everybody sit around and just sort of talk about that time period and what they did. That's a very interesting. I would be into that.
Well,
And I'd get to shut up, which is possible.
you know what? Let's arrange that sometime down the future, and
Deal.
yeah, that would be a great idea. But it was an honor having you on here. You were a fantastic guest, you
Uh,
know.
I
Yep.
thank you. I was a little nervous about doing this, but you made it easy, and I can't. Will I have a way of knowing where this is and how to find it?
Well, I'm gonna put it up. It'll be on YouTube, but it'll be unlisted for a while. Um, I I was told early on by my station manager, don't put stuff up right away, public. Save stuff for a rainy day.
Yes.
And
Yes.
lockdown became the rainy day because when lockdown happened, I had no station access. Luckily, one of my guests introduced me to Zoom. But at that time, the rest of 2020, I had no way to do my show. but I was lucky enough to have about 150 interviews in my backlog that I didn't have public. Now, what I do when it's
That's great.
unlisted, you can still post it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, so if you send it to me unlisted or send me the link to it, because I won't be able to get to it without a link if it's unlisted, from what I understand,
If
then
it's
I will post it.
unlisted, you can post it.
Or when you do finally post it, well, let me know. Let me see it anyway. I'm just curious to see
Yeah,
it, and we can.
I would let you post it. I have no problem with people posting it. It just means I can, because I see a lot of people when they do this, they'll post their interview right away, and then they scramble to get that next interview as
Yeah.
opposed to
Well,
savoring what they've just done.
you know what the
With
corollary of that? What the corollary of that is I have 4 in the can right now that I'm working on. I'm waiting for the video to get done on some of them, but before this, I would get one done. There was a period I was doing one song and video with it every 2 weeks, and I couldn't wait. Once I did it, it's like I got to get it out. Got to get it out. I want to. I'm excited about it. But then my brother said, let people build up a little appetite for it, get them hungry,
yeah,
and then let it go. And then you have a few in the can. And like you say, you could do it opportunistically. Either this song is right for this particular thing that's going on in society right now, or this or that. So yeah, timing and placement sound like it makes a lot of sense as well.
yeah,
Having some in the
yeah,
can.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So
All right,
that's
I have
kind
a
of,
patient actually coming up, so I'm going to have to go see a patient. This is much more fun.
well, I'll tell you what, before
You
I
were my
let you
patient
go,
today.
when before I let you go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
Sure. What do I do?
Just state your name and say that we're celebrating the 40th anniversary of Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and then say you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
All right. I don't know if I can remember all that, but
Go.
okay. David Brandt here, aka Reeves Nevo from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, prom scene, the band, and celebrating the 40th anniversary of Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Being very honored to be interviewed by Python Gilbert's podcast, video podcast, or I don't know what they call them these days, but and really happy to be here. And he's the greatest, he's a great interviewer. Really, really made me comfortable to be here.
Yep, and we'll get you and the bandmates on here at some point in the future.
Okay, that sounds fun. I'm aware we're on camera, so I'll just wish you good luck and keep me posted on what's going on.
And you keep us posted what's going on with Spicoli, because I'm pretty sure he's the guy that's coming in for you to do your session with.
Well, we're going to write, you and I are going to write a book about the trajectory of Spicoli, and then we'll get him to act in the older version of himself. I think, you may have something there. That's fascinating.
That
All right.
would be.
We're going to put our brains on that. Take good care.
All right. God bless you. Thanks a lot.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.